Good afternoon, officer. Good morning, officer.
Good morning, sir.
We do know each other. We've at least exchanged pleasantries a couple of times.
Yes, sir.
In the past. And I guess for purposes of this hearing, would you prefer that I refer to you as lieutenant or officer?
Lieutenant's fine.
Mr. Pryor, I apologize very much for the interruption. I wanted to confirm something on that last exhibit. It was entered by the court. Is that a demonstrative exhibit?
That's what I understood.
Either as a demonstrative or a summary.
Okay, thank you, counsel. Apologies for the interruption.
Judge, I'm also looking for the book. I found it. So, Lieutenant, you've been involved in a number of aspects in regards to this case, right?
That's correct.
You've done some investigation on your own in terms of a welfare check with Lori Vallow, is that right?
Yes.
But you've also interviewed a number of witnesses, is that correct?
Yes.
You interviewed Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, right?
Yes.
Several times?
Few times.
And you've interviewed a number of other witnesses as it relates to this case, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, now you previously discussed your role as a police officer and investigator in this case. And I guess I want to clarify something if we could, please. As a police officer investigating a case, your role is to conduct an investigation, right? Look at the facts.
Correct.
Try to establish and gain some information, right?
Correct.
But you're not supposed to judge one way or the other, right? You're supposed to remain neutral.
That's correct.
And you're not supposed to narrow that role as a police officer to a particular person. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In other words, you're supposed to look at the evidence as a whole. And rather than focusing on one person and saying, we're going to assume this person did this, and we're going to build our case around prosecuting that person, that would be inappropriate, wouldn't it?
Right.
Your role is actually to look at all the evidence, consider all the evidence. And once you've gathered all the evidence that you think is relevant to a case, what do you do with that evidence?
We follow the evidence.
Okay. And then once you follow the evidence and you've established a report or you've come to concluding your investigation, what do you do with that evidence that you've concluded with?
We put a case together.
Okay. And then do you provide it to someone?
We provide it to the prosecutors.
Okay. So there's distinct roles as part of a criminal case. You'd agree with that, right?
Yes.
And your role is to conduct an investigation, correct?
Correct.
Look into all possible evidence of any kind, correct?
That's correct.
And view the evidence, right?
Yes.
Not make any determination as to what that evidence means, but rather gather as much evidence as you think is relevant in your mind and put together a compilation of that evidence, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then at that point, only at that point, do you provide it to the prosecuting attorney and they make a determination as to whether or not they will pursue charges against them. Do you understand? Is that the way you understand the process is supposed to work?
Yes.
Okay. And if you were not to follow that process, if you were not to follow what I just described, that wouldn't be appropriate. There's protocols. You agree with that, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you should never blend the roles of a police officer with the role of a prosecuting attorney. You would agree with that, right?
Explain what you mean by blend the roles.
Well, I mean, it's not a prosecutor's role to show up at an investigation when you're conducting an investigation and engage in part of the process of interviewing witnesses. You'd agree with that, right?
I've had prosecutors show up to certain investigations.
Okay, but that's not the norm, is it?
I think it depends on the investigation.
Okay. So in other words, you think that it's appropriate that if a prosecutor is deciding whether to pursue charges against somebody, that they should also participate in the interviewing of these witnesses as part of that process. Is that what you're telling me?
I think it's important for a prosecutor to have all the information.
Well, doesn't that create a problem in your mind?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, let me talk to you a little bit about that. Because if you're doing an investigation and you're really remaining neutral as part of that investigation, right? You're not supposed to make judgments, correct?
Correct.
You're supposed to look at the evidence, gather all the evidence, and then make a determination of what evidence you want to submit to a prosecuting attorney, right?
Correct.
Do you ever get involved in the process of deciding whether someone should be charged or not?
What do you mean by that, sir?
Well, after the evidence is all gathered, and after you've done your report as a police officer and put together all of the information, do you ever go over to the prosecutor's office and say, you know what, I put this evidence together, and you know what, I want to have a discussion with you about whether or not we want to charge this person? That wouldn't be appropriate, would it?
I'm going to object as argumentative.
Sustained.
Okay. But would it be appropriate for a prosecutor to interview witnesses and inject their personal opinion in those processes of interviewing witnesses? Would that be proper under any circumstances?
And I'm going to object as argumentative.
I'll overrule that objection.
And could you repeat the question again?
Yes. But would it be appropriate for a prosecutor to interview witnesses and inject their personal opinion in those processes of interviewing witnesses? Would that be proper under the circumstances?
To interject their personal opinion?
Yeah.
I would say probably not.
Okay. So if you're engaging in name calling or making references to a person's character in a case, that would clearly be an inappropriate act, would it not?
Objection beyond the scope, Your Honor.
That's sustained. And it's facts, not evidence.
Right. Now, you spoke a little bit about this body cam issue. And you said that it was a policy that there's only one body cam among 7 or 10 of you as detectives. Is that right?
No, sir, I never once said it was policy. I just said there was only one body cam.
Oh,
So than 7 detectives.
So in other words, you share a body cam. It's not a policy within the department.
Correct.
Okay, is there a policy in the department about recording or trying to preserve a record when you're interviewing witnesses?
Yes.
Okay, and what's that policy, sir?
When we interview and conduct interviews at the police department.
Yeah.
Those interviews are recorded.
Okay. Now, what about if you're out in the field and you're conducting an interview? Is that to be recorded as well?
There's no policy that says it has to be recorded.
Okay. Do you carry a microphone as well, officer, other than a body cam?
No, not on my person, I don't.
Okay. Do you carry a cell phone while you're doing that that's issued by the county?
Do I keep the cell phone in my car? Yes.
I didn't ask you that. I said, do you carry a cell phone when you go out in the field?
On my person or in my vehicle?
Either one.
In my vehicle.
Okay. And does that cell phone have the technology that allows you to record or photograph and videotape images?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So what I understand is on November 26, 2019, you were directed your folks to go out to the Lori Vallow residence. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and you said that you were with Ron Ball. Is that who you said you were with?
At one time, yes, I was with a couple different officers that day.
Oh, so tell me who you were with on that day. Remind me.
Detective Dave Holt,
Okay,
Detective David Stubbs,
okay.
and Lieutenant Ron Ball.
So there were 4 of you who went out there to locate or to find out some information about what again? Remind me.
About the whereabouts of J.J. Vallow.
Okay, and this was a concern that you had because you were contacted by another law enforcement agency expressing concern about the safety of a young child, right?
No, sir.
Okay, tell me what was the purpose?
It was a simple welfare check.
Okay. And you went out on this welfare check, and there were, if my math is correct, please correct me. Did all 4 of you detectives and lieutenants go out at the same time?
No, sir.
You went out at different times.
Myself and Dave Hope went out initially.
Okay, and then when did the other two officers show up?
When I called them based on the lies that I had been told.
Okay. And these lies that you've been told, at that point, you and Detective Hope, neither of you decided to bring a video camera, right?
That's correct.
And neither of you decided to wear a recorder to record any of the incidents that took place about these so-called lies, right?
That's correct.
And nobody took out their phone and recorded it or made a video or audio recording of the discussion with Mr. Daybell or Mr. Cox on November 26, 2019, right?
That's correct.
And even after you said these so-called lies, even after you discovered that, Mr. Daybell apparently told you something that you didn't think was true, at that point, did you instruct any of the officers who were coming to aid you? Maybe it's a good idea we should bring an audio with, or a video camera with us, or a mic to record some of these statements, because I have some concerns. Did you think about that?
We did that, sir.
Hold on. I'm going with that. There was an objection and sustaining the objection. So, strike the answer. You can ask another question, Mr. Pryor.
And it was Detective Stubbs who had the video cam, is that right?
That's correct, sir.
And that was when you video cammed Miss Vallow, about when you had contact eventually with Miss Vallow, is that what the video camera that you're talking about?
I didn't have contact with Miss Vallow.
Now, I'm a little confused about something. And maybe you can clear this up. You said that you asked Mr. Daybell first about whether he had Lori Vallow's phone number, correct?
No, sir. I didn't contact Mr. Daybell till after I contacted Alex Cox.
Okay. At some point, did you ask for Lori Vallow's phone number for Mr. Daybell?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And at no point did you ever make a threat to him saying you're going to turn this phone number over to us, right?
No, sir.
At no point did any other officer walk up to him and say, if you don't turn this phone number over, you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. That never took place to your knowledge, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But then after that, you're saying, at first he said, I'm not going to give you the phone number. And then out of the blue, he decides to give you the phone number.
Objection misstates the facts and evidence.
Okay. Then subsequent to that, he
Hold on,
decides,
Mr. Pryor. When there's an objection, I'm gonna rule on it before you launch into another question. So the objection is sustained.
subsequent to that, he decides to give you the phone number. Is that right?
Can you repeat the question, please?
I'll go back over the analysis here.
Thank you.
Your testimony is that Mr. Daybell refused to give you the phone number at first, correct?
That's correct.
And that was an adamant refusal. He said, no, I don't know what her phone number is, right?
That's correct.
And then without any further prompting by the police officers or any encouragement by law enforcement, he shows back up and gives you the phone number later, right?
Objection is misstating the facts and the
Well,
evidence.
I'm trying to establish the facts, Judge.
The objection's overruled. If the witness has an answer, you may answer.
You say he showed back up. He never left when I originally asked him.
Okay,
I had to ask him twice to get the phone number.
okay. And how much time passed between the first request and the second request?
Roughly a minute.
Okay. So without any prompting by the police, he asked him for the phone number. He denied, and then within 60 seconds, he said, oh, here's the phone number. Is that what your testimony is?
When Detective Hope started walking towards us and I re-asked him again, that's when he gave me the number.
So you had to ask him twice. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Now I'm going to kind of bounce around a little bit, okay? Please bear with me, okay? You made a comment about supposed paintball guns, and if I misquote your testimony, please correct me, okay? You said something about a supposed paintball gun incident with Tammy Daybell, right?
Yes,
And you later on decided that it was the words you used were a shooting. Is that the words you used?
probably.
Well, you were just here testifying a few minutes ago and just used the word shooting when Mr. Wood talked to you about that, right?
Yes.
Now, as part of your investigation, you've had a chance to look at all the evidence, right? In this case, you got access to almost all the evidence in this case,
That's
right?
correct.
And have you gone through all the evidence in this case?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and did you look at evidence of facts and circumstances surrounding the Tammy Daybell incident on October 9th?
Yes.
And Judge, just bear with me.
Your Honor, if he's going to be showing evidence digitally, can we put our screen back up?
Yeah.
Not sure I'm going to be up there, but okay. Now, I would represent to you that we previously stipulated to the admission of a number of exhibits in this case. And one of the exhibits is exhibit number 16. Okay? And the parties that previously exhibited, Judge, we've already moved it, it's already been exhibited. So what I'm going to do is show you exhibit 16. Okay?
And this is one already admitted.
It's already been admitted, Judge, previously. Now, you talked about facts, and you used the word shooting is what you used, right? With Tammy Daybell?
Correct.
And you don't believe that Tammy Daybell was shot at with anything other than a paintball gun, do you?
Objection relevance.
Overruled.
You don't believe that Tammy Daybell was shot with anything other than a paintball gun, do you?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay, and what do you base that on?
The evidence through our investigation.
Okay. And part of your investigation is did you look at the Tammy Daybell evidence that she provided to your office?
To my office or Fremont County?
Fremont County.
I did.
Okay. And one of the pieces of evidence is exhibit number 16. Judge, I don't see it going on.
All right, counsel, if you'd like, we can take a lunch break or we can keep moving on here for a minute.
Here we are, Judge.
Okay.
Okay, and officer, I'd have you turn to the screen and see if you can read the screen. Just read it. Not out loud, just to yourself. Let me know when you're done.
I'm done, sir.
Okay. And I would represent to you that this is a email from Tammy Daybell to her friends in the Salem 3rd Ward of her church. Okay? And would you start with the word something and read the email to me?
Something really weird just happened. I want you to know so you can watch out. I'd gotten home and parked in our front driveway. As I was getting stuff out of the back seat, a guy wearing a ski mask suddenly standing at the back of my car with a paintball gun. He shot at me several times, although I don't think it was loaded. I yelled for Chad and he ran around the back of the house. I have no idea what his motive was, and he never spoke, even after I asked him several times what he though.
Okay. So, and do you see the date on this email? It's just about friends there.
I'm going to object to this being characterized as an email.
I'll sustain that. you want to clarify, Mr. Pryor, what type of communication it is?
Well, it's a communication to the Friends of the Church, and I think it's a text
I'm
message.
sorry.
I can. I believe it's a text message. Judge, I may have misstated that it was an email.
Okay.
So this text message went out to all of the Friends of the Salem Third Ward. It's an LDS ward over in the town of Salem, right?
I can't answer
I
that.
don't know. You know where the town of Salem is, right?
I do.
And that's a town that's close to Rexburg?
Correct.
Okay. And obviously, you can't answer that about the ward or anything like that, but obviously the term ward would suggest that it's some sort of a religious group of folks they're talking to, right?
Correct.
Okay. But this email doesn't say that she was shot with a gun, or there's even a mention of a gun. The email talks about a paintball.
Again, I'm going to object to characterization of this as an email. It needs to be
Text message, Judge, it's gonna be.
I'm sorry. Let's be clear.
Yeah. When there's an objection, Mr. Pryor, again, gotta have time to get it on the record, make a ruling, and then respond, please. So sustained, this states the evidence.
Text.
I'm also going to object to this being described as a text message. There needs to be some foundation for what this evidence actually is.
Judge, I don't need a foundation. This has been admitted as an exhibit. This is
All right.
admitted.
I'll overrule that objection. Jury can review it in the format it came in with the screen capture.
So at any rate, this message from Ms. Daybell to the people in the Third Ward doesn't say that it was a gun, does it?
Does say it's a gun, it just says it's a paintball gun.
Oh, it says paintball gun. You're right. Okay.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't say any other gun, right? If there's any confusion about that, right?
Not in this email or text.
Okay. Did you also have an occasion to look at the, I'll be bringing that up later, but the search engine from Tammy Daybell's account?
No, I did not look at the search engine for Tammy's.
Were you aware that, and I'm gonna hack his name, but one of the officers, Officer K, whatever his name is, Officer K, was provided email, search information that Tammy Daybell engaged in regarding paintball guns in a picture. Were you aware of that?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm asking whether he's aware of it.
Overruled.
Are you aware of it?
I was aware that he was provided information. I can't tell you exactly what information he was.
Okay, we'll get to that in another day. But did you also listen to the 911 call that was made regarding the paintball incident?
I did.
Okay. And there was no mention of a gun in that 911 call, right?
No.
The mention in the 911 call is that someone took a shot at me or tried to take a shot with a paintball gun, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So the suggestion today that it was a gun is based on your own hunch, right?
No, sir.
Well, do you have the gun?
I have evidence of Google searches done by Alex Cox around that time.
Okay. Do you have information as to where Alex Cox was at the time of this alleged shooting?
Yes, sir.
You do have evidence of that?
He was at the Daybell residence earlier that day.
I didn't ask you on the day of the Daybell residence at the time of this shooting. Do you recall when this shooting took place?
I believe it was maybe 8 in the evening, maybe.
Right. And let's clarify this because the data that you have regarding him being at the residence was much earlier in the day, right?
That's correct.
And you don't have any data that shows that Alex Cox's phone dinged or any other communication device that Alex Cox had was at the location of the house at the time of this paintball incident, do you?
At the time, no, sir.
Okay. And so at this point, the information you're talking about is there's some Google searches by Alex Cox, correct?
That's correct.
And the information is that you've decided to not take into consideration Tammy Daybell's own statement about a paintball gun?
Objection misstates his testimony.
Sustained.
So what other information are you leaning on to suggest that this was anything but a paintball gun?
The Google searches performed by Alex Cox talked about shooting through Dodge Dakota.
Okay. And I appreciate that. And That would be one of Chad and Tammy Daybell's vehicles, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, were you aware of who was driving the Dodge Dakota at the time that incident took place?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you talk to any of the family members, any of the 4 children about who was actually the driver of this Dodge Dakota that Alex Cox was trying to figure out a way to shoot through?
We attempted to contact those children and they wouldn't speak with us.
Okay, so you don't know whether Chad Daybell or Tammy Daybell were driving that Dodge Dakota, right?
That's correct.
So the reality is that Tammy Daybell was driving the Dodge Dakota. It sounds like Alex Cox had something for Tammy Daybell. Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just simply stating what Mr. Cox's Google searches were around the time of that shooting.
Okay, and you're basing those Google searches on your position that you believe this was a shooting, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so if Chad Daybell was driving the Dodge Dakota during this time, and he was the primary driver and maybe the only driver, would that mean then you would be looking at whether Alex Cox was trying to shoot Chad Daybell?
Chad Daybell didn't call in a 911 call and said he was shot at. Tammy Daybell.
Yeah, but Tammy Daybell called in a 911 call about a paintball gun. And it was a paintball gun. And we'll have Officer Cannon talk about that. And we'll listen to the 911 call.
Objection, that's not a question.
Well, the question is,
Mr. Pryor, again, you've got to give me an opportunity to rule an objection. If it is sustained, it's just argument, it's not a question. You can ask another question.
the shooting and the call that was taking place was in reference to a paintball gun incident, wasn't it?
Can you repeat the question, sir? I couldn't hear you.
The call that was made regarding this incident was a 911 call about a paintball incident, wasn't it? They used the words paintball in the 911 call.
That's correct.
We'll move on. Okay. Now, we previously talked about, and Judge, I don't know when you want to stop. I've got a ways to go.
I think this probably is a good time for the lunch break, even though so we will take our lunch recess. That will be an hour. We'll plan on coming back on for additional testimony around 10 1/4 after 1.
All rise, please. All rise, please. The jury is present and counsel.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, we are back on the record on case CR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. The defense is conducting cross-examination of the witness, Detective Hermosillo. Mr. Pryor, if you'd like to continue, you may.
Officer Hermosillo, I'm gonna take my time. I had probably a little too much coffee this morning, so I waited that over the lunch hour, and now I think I'm okay. Let's hope so, and I think the judges admonished me enough at this point that I think I got the point. So, we're gonna go a little slower if you don't mind. So, I wanna go back to the paintball incident. And you said that one of the pieces of evidence was that Alex Cox had Googled a black Dodge Dakota, correct?
He Googled what caliber it would take to shoot through the windshield of Dodge Dakota.
Was it the windshield?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Judge, there's previously been an admission of Exhibit 34 by stipulation. That's Homer J. Maximus with a reference to the state as well. And we'll get back to that in a minute, but there was at least a reference at some point that there was going to be trying to find out what kind of caliber it would take to penetrate a Dodge Dakota vehicle, at some point, windshield or otherwise, correct?
Correct.
And you took that as a threat, as a means of saying that's why Alex Cox was trying to kill Tammy Daybell.
That Google search, along with him being at that residence that same day earlier,
Okay,
and the incident involving Tammy Daybell,
okay, okay. Okay, and that's what drew you to that conclusion, is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay. So we don't know who was driving the Dodge Dakota regularly, do we? Because you didn't speak with the kids, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And we do know that on the day that you said Chad Daybell, at least you were alleging that Chad Daybell fled on sometime in June 9th. Is that right?
Objection misstates the testimony.
Well, try to clarify that. High rate of speed, Chad Daybell left the area. Is that fair?
That's fair.
That's what you're stating, correct?
That's correct.
And in the vehicle that he was in, do you know that that was the Dodge Dakota that supposedly he was fleeing in?
It was not Dodge Dakota he was fleeing in.
Okay, what vehicle was he fleeing in?
I can't recall off the top of my head. We have it in inbound, but it wasn't the Dodge Dakota.
Okay. Okay. So there were two vehicles, an Equinox and a Dodge Dakota. Which one was it?
Which day, sir?
On June 9th, there are two vehicles that the Daybells owned, an Equinox and the Dodge Dakota. So which one was it that he was allegedly fleeing?
I just stated I couldn't recall the vehicle that
Okay.
was arrested.
Okay, okay, that's fair, that's fair. So, just to recap, we know that there was a Google search by Alex Cox on his Homer J. Maximus account, correct?
Correct.
And that there was an allegation that someone was, or that Alex Cox was trying to figure out what type of caliber to at least shoot at a black Dodge Dakota, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We don't know who the target was, or who the target was in that Dodge Dakota, but we know it was someone who owned the vehicle, obviously, right?
Well, I would assume so.
Okay, okay. Now, that's what you based on the fact that you thought that there was an attempt on Tammy Daybell that day, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, when you read that email from the Homer J, or the research from the Homer J. Maximus account, did you take into consideration the date of when that search took place?
I did.
And when was that?
I can't recall. I have to refer to my notes.
Okay. I'm gonna take the liberty of helping you out a little bit.
Exhibit
34.
34, sorry, which 34 has sub exhibits, is
I
that
believe it's A, Judge.
34A is admitted previously by stipulation. 34A is what you're trying to publish, Mr. Pryor.
Yes, Judge.
I don't know if there's someone can assist to see what the. Okay, it is admitted.
There we go. I'm sorry. I don't know what. all the best laid plans to prepare for this. So I'd like you to take a look up at the screen, if you would. Look at the date of when this search took place.
Okay.
And what is that date
October 12th,
of?
2019.
Okay, now what was the date that allegedly Tammy Daybell was shot at with a paintball gun?
October 9th, 2019.
So if I understand, the incident with the paintball gun took place 3 days before this search took place.
Correct.
Okay, but you still continue to believe that was the basis for someone going after Tammy Daybell, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. But you don't have any Google searches that suggest anything else in a threatening manner. This is the one and only that you're relying on, is that right?
No, that's not right.
All right, what else are you relying on?
If you scroll up on October 9th, I believe that evening,
Okay. Go ahead.
Alex Cox Googles how to make an AR-15 function in cold weather.
Okay.
There's some other Googles if you'd like to pull it up.
Well, I've got those and we're gonna go through those. And we'll have an opportunity to do that, but,
And that was the night Tammy was shot at.
okay. And he Googled that night, right?
That's correct.
What time of night was that, do you recall?
I'd have to look at my notes.
Okay. Okay, but he also had a habit of Googling a lot of things, right?
I can't answer that.
Well, you know about the Hannibal Lecter thing, right?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, before we get to the Hannibal Lecter thing, let's talk a little bit about some of the other searches from Homer J. Maximus. October 21. Best tactical cutting knives, right?
Correct.
See that one?
All right, and Mr. Pryor, you are gonna have to stay by that microphone or we don't pick up what you said.
Okay, Judge. October 22nd, 2019. Sharpening swords. Knife sharpener, right?
Correct.
Okay, what was the date of Tammy Daybell's death?
October 19th, 2019.
Okay, so 3 days after Tammy Daybell dies, Alex Cox is still looking at sharpening swords and a block knife sharpener 3 days after Tammy Daybell's death. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. October 23rd. 4 days after Tammy Daybell's died. 15 facts about the silence of the lambs you didn't know. Call that one?
No, sir.
Okay. And that was 4 days after Tammy dies, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when you searched, and I believe it was 107, was that the unit that we found all of the knives and the guns?
No, sir, that was 175.
Okay, 175, that was Lori Vallow's unit then, right?
That was the unit that Lori Vallow lived in, but Alex Cox was on the tenant agreement.
Okay, okay. And your testimony previously, I believe that was a day or so ago, there were a significant number of weapons found, right?
That's correct.
Did you do a check on all of those weapons to see who they belonged to?
I personally did not do a check on all those weapons.
What about the knives or the ammunition? Did you check and see who those belong to?
I'm not quite sure how to check on who the
I
knives
don't
belong to.
I don't either. I just asked because are you presuming that the owner of those knives and guns and ammunition is Alex Cox?
They were found amongst his belongings, so I
Okay.
presume that is.
And we talked about this before, when I was doing some voir dire and native objection, that a lot of those items were items, the knives and the ammunition were items that you pulled out of bags and displayed for purposes of for lack of a better word, staging them for your photo op, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But again, all of the ammunition, all of the weapons, all of the knives, and the ski mask, that was found in Alex Cox's, at or near Alex Cox's belongings, right?
Correct.
So I don't want you to speculate, but you're presuming that Alex Cox owned all of those, right?
That's correct.
There's no indication that Lori Vallow had several guns and knives and things like that. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. I want to switch gears a little bit. And I want to talk to you a little bit about Charles Vallow. Okay? And I assume you've been communicating with the folks down in Arizona about all of that. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, so you're well versed in the facts as it relates to Charles Vallow, correct?
No, I wouldn't say well versed. I know the basics.
Okay, but are part of the basics to know where the court proceedings are and who was charged with what?
You would have to be more specific.
Okay, and do you know currently who's charged in the death of Charles Vallow?
Yes.
Okay, who is that?
Lori Vallow.
Okay, are you aware that the prosecuting attorney down in Maricopa County issued a
Objection hearsay.
That's the same.
Judge, I'm asking whether he's aware, not whether he.
Well, by the time you say what he's aware of, then all the information's coming through his head, so it's the same.
Okay. Are you aware that Chad Daybell is not charged with anything in Maricopa County relating to Charles Vallow?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Brandon Boudreaux's next. Who's been charged in the allegations against Brandon Boudreaux?
Lori Vallow.
Is there anybody else?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and you're also aware that Chad Daybell has not been charged in the allegations as they relate to Brandon Boudreaux. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Now, if Alex Cox was still alive, the suggestion seems to be that he would have been charged with both of those offenses. Would that be fair?
Objection calls for speculation.
It's the same.
Okay. Do you have any information as to who killed Charles Vallow?
Yes.
Who do you believe killed Charles Vallow?
Alex Cox.
Okay. Who do you believe took the shot at Brandon Boudreaux?
Alex Cox.
Okay, thank you. Now, did you have the occasion to look into the history of Alex Cox a little bit?
Briefly.
Okay, were you aware of an incident that occurred in, let me get the date right, August 5th of 2007?
You'd have to be more specific about what occurred on that date, sir.
On that date, there was an allegation that there was an assault on a Joseph Ryan.
That's correct.
You're familiar with that, is that right?
Yes.
And in 2007, is there any indication that Chad Daybell knew Lori Vallow in 2007?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. And in that incident, are you aware that Alex Cox committed aggravated assault on Joseph Ryan?
Your Honor, at this point, I'm going to object to relevance.
I think we're outside the scope of what's happening in this case, Mr. Pryor.
Judge, can I approach, please, with counsel?
Sure, outside box.
Judge,
All right, but I just wanted to reiterate, we had an objection that was sustained on relevance grounds, and the court confirms that objection, including under 403, it's not relevant for purposes of this case.
Judge, based on that ruling, the state would move to strike the question.
All right, the question stricken on that topic won't be allowed.
I would like to talk to you a little bit about Chad Daybell's phone, and I'd like you to refresh my recollection. Okay? Yeah. You made mention that on the 26th, when you were doing the initial welfare check, you followed up with calls to Mr. Daybell. Is that right?
That's right.
And your testimony was that you weren't able to get an answer, or the phone was turned off.
Every time we called, it went straight to voicemail, I believe.
Oh, all right. Did you have an opportunity to go through Mr. Daybell's phone records?
I personally have not. No.
So there's no indication that the phone was ever turned off, was there?
I can't testify that I didn't go through his records.
Right. But you can testify that it just went to voicemail.
Correct. I can testify he didn't answer.
Okay. Now, when you searched Lori Vallow's residence, there weren't any clothes in there. In the residence that she had hanging up on hangers, right?
That's correct.
Do you have any information to suggest that she had mailed or shipped her clothes to another location?
No, I don't.
Okay. And then you, at the time, you were aware that Mr. Daybell obviously was married to Ms. Vallow at that point. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is it your allegation that Mr. Daybell left on the 26th or 27th and also tried to avoid contact with law enforcement?
I can't answer why Mr. Daybell left. All I can answer to is I wasn't able to get a hold of him after that date.
Okay, and after that date, did you happen to check credit cards or phone records or anything like that to try to locate him?
Again, sir, I didn't go through Mr. Daybell's phone records.
Okay. Did you gain any information that Mr. Daybell was going on a vacation around the 26th or 27th of that, the end of the month?
We later learned that Mr. Daybell was in California.
Okay. And later learned that he was in California, and that was about the time of the 28th or 29th of November. Is that right?
I'd have to refer to my notes.
Okay. And were you aware?
Sounds right.
Okay. And again, maybe the coffee's still affecting me. I'll try to slow down. Okay. But you're also aware that Mr. Daybell on the 28th being at Knott's Berry Farms, right?
Correct.
And that was a family vacation with his kids, correct?
I can't testify to who was there.
Okay, so Mr. Daybell wasn't fleeing. He was on the 26th or 27th of the month when Lori Vallow's closet was empty. Mr. Daybell was on a family vacation.
I can't testify that he wasn't fleeing. I can testify that I knew he was in California at a later date.
Okay. And you know that later date was the end of November, right?
Close to that date, sir, yes.
Okay. And you know that subsequent to that, he went on a trip to Hawaii after that, right?
Yes, he was in Hawaii after that.
Right. So if I understand the testimony, Mr. Daybell was at some point after the 26th, went on a planned family vacation at Knott's Berry Farms, right?
I can't testify it was a planned family vacation.
Okay, all right, that's okay. And then subsequent to that, he then went to Hawaii on a trip to Hawaii where there was some contact with you folks, correct?
Yeah, we made contact with Mr. Daybell in Hawaii.
Okay. And how is it that you found that out that he was in Hawaii again? Remind me, please.
Through tips that came in through our hotlines that we had set up and cell phone data.
And this is just a question, I'm kind of curious. Did maybe you just look at plane records?
Are you asking?
Yeah,
if I-
I'm asking, did you guys look at your,
I can't.
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, I'm sorry, sir.
Can you repeat the question, please?
At any time, did you just take the initiative to look at plane records?
So each officer was tasked with different things.
Okay,
We did have an officer that looked through finance financial, and I assume he did look through plane records and credit cards.
Okay. And Mr. Daybell was flying on a commercial plane or traveling from Boise to Knott's Berry Farm on a commercial plane. In your experience and knowledge of these things, there would have been a record of that, right?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now, I'm going to switch gears again a little bit, okay? Please forgive me because I just want to make sure I hit all of these subjects. And before we go there, I want to make sure you did get a subpoena from my office. Is that correct? That's correct. And you've acknowledged that you've accepted that, correct? Right. And you were kind enough to contact my office and agree that if I need you to come back, you'll come back at a time suitable for both of us. Is that fair?
Yes.
Was there anything else discussed during that phone conversation?
Dade said I couldn't make it back.
Okay, and that was because, and we're not going to get into this to let everybody know because it's nobody else's business, but you have an obligation of some sort, and I've acknowledged that, and we're going to work on that. Is that fair?
Objection relevance.
Sustained.
Okay. Now, as part of your investigation, and I want to be specific to J.J. Vallow, okay? The last known sign of life was the 22nd. Is that fair?
The last
time that someone
died was September 22nd of 2019.
Right. Okay. And the last, at least proof of life for Tylee Ryan was September 8th
Of 2019.
of 2019. So I'll do the math in my head if I can. There's 15 days difference between Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow. Is that correct? For the last proof of living or life, respectively.
Roughly.
15 days. You think J.J. Died on around the 9th of September, 8th or 9th of September, and Tylee was the 22nd or 23rd. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Now, as part of the investigation, you looked into where J.J. Vallow was on the 22nd of September, correct?
Correct.
And on the evening of the 22nd of September, he was at Lori Vallow's home.
That's correct.
Okay. And present in that home, staying in that home, were Lori Vallow, correct?
Correct.
At least on the 22nd, J.J. Vallow was there, correct?
That's correct.
Melanie Gibb was there, correct?
Correct.
And David Warwick was there.
Correct.
Okay. And on that evening, they were conducting some sort of a religious podcast, the three of them, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the allegation is that JJ was acting up and went into the care of Alex Cox.
Correct.
And then Alex took JJ into a separate apartment, correct?
On which day?
On the 22nd?
He took him to apartment 107. Correct.
Right. His apartment or whoever was on the lease for that apartment, right?
That's right.
Okay. And then the last time that anybody saw JJ was later that evening, is that fair?
Yes.
And that was when Alex Cox was carrying JJ Vallow into the apartment of Lori, David, and Melanie Gibb, right?
Correct.
Who were all staying there together, correct?
That's correct.
And then somewhere at that point, whether it was at that point or subsequent to that evening, or that evening, that's when you believe that J.J. Vallow was murdered.
That's correct.
Okay. But the next morning, there were three people in the apartment at that time early in the morning, correct?
Objection foundation.
Well, do you know who was in the apartment early that morning on the 23rd?
Hold on, Mr. Pryor. There's an objection, I think that will sustain.
Do you have any knowledge of who was in the apartment on the 23rd of September, the morning of 2019?
Yes.
And who was there?
David Warwick, Melanie Gibb, and Lori Vallow.
Okay, and at that point, you believe that J.J. Vallow was already dead?
I can't testify to the time, but I believe he was killed.
Okay, but then within 2 hours later from that morning, you believe that he was buried on Chad Daybell's property, is that right?
That's correct.
You had an occasion to talk with Melanie Gibb and David Warwick, is that right?
That's right.
Now, you did it a couple of times, if I recall, one by phone, right? With Melanie Gibb?
Correct.
And that wasn't recorded, was it?
It was recorded.
It was recorded?
With her attorney?
No. No, I'm talking about a regular phone call with Melanie Gibb, without an attorney.
I don't remember a phone call.
Okay, all right, we're gonna revisit that maybe at another date, but that's fine. But you also went down to Provo, Utah. And I'm going off of memory, but it was Provo, Utah on the 4th of June of 2020, is that right?
Sure.
Now, at that point, you were interviewing both David Warwick and Melanie Gibb about information they had about these allegations, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And who else was there?
Myself, Lieutenant Ball, and Prosecutor Wood.
Okay, so the prosecuting attorney, Mr. Wood, right there, and a lieutenant that you work with and yourself drove down to Provo, Utah.
Correct.
And was there anybody from any local law enforcement there as well?
No.
Okay, now there was an effort to record that conversation, is that right?
Yes, it was recorded.
Okay, was the entire thing recorded?
I believe the very beginning wasn't. The recorder malfunctioned or something happened that was recorded, but the majority of that interview was recorded.
The majority of it was.
That's correct.
So if I represent to you that there was 22 minutes of recording on that interview, does that sound about the length of what the interview was with Melanie Gibb?
No.
It doesn't?
No.
Okay. Would it be helpful if you were able to listen to that recording and view that recording to refresh your recollection?
Refresh my recollection.
Like about the length of time that recording was?
It should have been longer than 22 minutes. Either longer than 22 minutes.
How long were you there?
Roughly, say about an hour maybe.
Okay. Now, your testimony is that it should have been longer than 21 or 22 minutes, is that right?
That's correct.
Would it surprise you to learn that, well, you don't know exactly how long that interview took place, right?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the exact time.
And you don't know the length of the recording itself, is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay, and in order to determine that, it would be helpful for you to refresh your recollection by listening to the interview, and it would be able to answer those questions for you. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Your Honor, I'm going to object beyond the scope.
We're way beyond the scope of your red counsel. If also the officer's going to review that, and I permit it, of course, it's not going to be in the presence of the jury. So also saying the objection on beyond the scope.
Judge, are you talking about beyond the scope of direct examination?
Yes.
Okay, then officer, we'll revisit that at another time, okay? And we'll leave that for another opportunity when I call you back. Now, on the day that J.J. Vallow was found on June 9th, okay? The pictures and the testimony you showed suggested that he was wearing with red pajamas and some Skechers socks. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Do you have a recollection of what J.J. Ballo was wearing based on your investigation when he was carried by Alex Cox from Alex Cox's apartment to the upstairs of Lori Vallo's apartment?
Objection, this calls for hearsay.
It doesn't necessarily call for hearsay. It's wondering what he observed him wearing, if you know, so
Yes.
let's have a roll on that.
Tell me if you know the answer.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Do you know whether or not J.J. Ballo was wearing red pajamas when he was carried upstairs by Alex Cox?
Sir, I don't know the answer to that
Okay.
question.
Okay. And Judge, I think at this point, I'm going to save the rest of my questioning for when I call the officer back in my case in chief. That's okay.
Very well. You can do that. I'll conclude the cross-examination then. This time we'll begin with redirect from the state. Mr. Wood.
Your Honor, may I be handed State's Exhibit 31? Yes, and State's Exhibit 30. Detective, you testified earlier about when you first met Al or Chad Daybell.
Correct.
Who was he with?
Alex Cox.
Did he look afraid of Alex Cox?
No.
Okay. Alex Cox was Chad Daybell's brother-in-law, correct? When you met him?
That's correct.
Detective, you were asked about your beliefs. Is that fair? In cross-examination, you were asked about your beliefs.
Yes.
Let's talk about your investigation. When you started your investigation, what was the scope of your investigation?
Initially, it was to find the Jeep from Gilbert, Arizona.
And then it expanded, correct?
Correct.
And then what was the scope of your investigation?
To find the whereabouts of JJ and Tylee.
And all this time you're collecting information from various sources.
That's correct.
Your Honor, may I publish State's Exhibit 31?
Yes.
Detective, you were asked about your beliefs, correct?
That's correct.
And you were asked about your beliefs regarding, I'm going to call it the paintball incident. Is that fair?
Yes.
And when I'm talking about that, to your understanding, what am I referring to?
The attempted shooting of Timmy Daybell.
And you testified you don't believe it was a paintball gun.
That's correct.
So why not?
Through our investigation, we learned that Alex Cox was in the area and on the property of Chad Daybell the morning that Tammy Daybell was shot at October 9th. Through Google searches from Homer J. Maximus, which was Alex's Google account, the night that Tammy Daybell was shot, it was a colder evening. And the Google searches were how to make an AR-15 function in cold weather. On October 8th, the night before, we believe Tammy was shot at, Alex is Googling drop yardage from 300 yards to 100 yards, which we assumed when you're shooting a rifle, you're adjusting your sights to your target. That was the night before. The morning of the shooting, Alex was on Mr. Daybell's property. We have him driving up and down the road of Mr. Daybell's property and also on the property. Later that evening into the early morning hours of October 10th is when he Googled how to make your AR-15 function in cold weather. So that's why we believe that it wasn't just a paintball gun. We believe that Alex Cox was there to shoot Tammy Daybell.
Okay. I'm gonna have you look at this timeline. And as far as you're aware, these dates are accurate, correct?
I'm sorry.
As far as you're aware, these, in pursuant to your investigation, these dates are accurate, correct?
That's correct.
Did the fact that Tammy Daybell died 10 days after that incident have any bearing on whether or not you believed it was a paintball gun?
Yes.
Did the fact that Chad Daybell got married 17 days later have any bearing on your belief whether or not it was a paintball gun?
Yes.
The fact that there were 2 children buried on Chad Daybell's property have any bearing on whether or not you believed it was a paintball gun?
Yes.
Did the fact that Lori Vallow's husband died within months of these other deaths have any bearing on your belief of whether or not it was a paintball gun?
Absolutely.
And finally, did the fact that Brandon Boudreaux was shot at on October 2nd, 2019 have any bearing on your belief of whether or not it was a paintball gun?
Yes.
And it's your belief that Alex Cox was tied to these events, correct?
That's correct.
And because you were asked about your beliefs, was it your belief that Chad Daybell was tied to these events?
Yes.
Why?
Based on our investigation, the lies that we've been told, the fact that we tried to get a hold of the kid's mother, Lori Vallow, the kid's stepfather, Chad Daybell, their uncle, Alex Cox. We weren't able to get a hold of anybody. We were left in the dark. Based on all those events, that's what our beliefs were collectively.
Pursuant to your investigation, you know when Alex Cox died?
December 12th, 2019.
At any time after Alex Cox died, did Mr. Daybell call the Rexburg police to report that there might be dead children located on his property?
No, he didn't.
Did he call the Rexburg police with any concerns that perhaps his wife had been harmed by someone?
No, he didn't.
Did he call the Rexburg police before Alex Cox died to say he might be in danger?
Judge, we're going beyond the scope. If you walk into I would ask that it be an opportunity to revisit those issues.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
Okay.
So
Again, so the first time you met Chad Daybell, what was the first thing you asked him? When you had an opportunity to speak with him?
Asked and answered.
This is a response to the cross you're overruled.
I asked him when the last time he saw JJ Vallow was.
And what did he answer?
In October in apartment 107 with Lori Vallow.
And did you ask for Lori Vallow's phone number?
I did.
And what was his first response?
Judge, this has been asked and answered.
It's a response to the cross.
overruled.
His response was he didn't know her cell phone.
Detective, you were asked a little bit about how you do an investigation. Correct?
Correct.
And we spoke about the scope of your investigation in this case.
Correct.
It was your testimony that you followed where the evidence took you in this case.
That's correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Wood.
Judge, there were some issues that were opened up. I'd like an opportunity to revisit this.
There were a few, so a limited recross, particularly considering your statement, you're going to recall the witness, it'll be limited, but if you'd like to, Mr. Pryor, you may.
Detective, there was some testimony about, I'll wait for you to need it. Thank you. There was some testimony that you had the whereabouts of Alex Cox on the property of Chad Daybell, and that would have been on the 9th
That's correct.
of October.
Yes,
Do you have a recollection of how long he was there on that property?
I don't.
Okay, and you're basing that knowledge on his phone records and his pings, right?
Correct.
Did you have an occasion to look at all of Alex Cox's whereabouts on that day by way of his phone records, or did you just look at that specific time?
We were more interested in that specific time.
Okay, and I gather from your testimony that you didn't look at between 8 and 10 o'clock on the 9th when the paintball incident took place. You didn't look at that time for Alex Cox's whereabouts, did you?
If I remember right, I didn't get his location near the property at that time. There was no location.
Okay. And isn't it true, officer, that you didn't get his location? Alex Cox's phone was pinging in Idaho Falls at that time, several miles away.
I can't testify to that.
Okay. But you know he wasn't on the property by way of his phone ping and all of the metadata. That's the word you used, right? Metadata?
Correct.
By the metadata, Alex Cox wasn't on the Daybell property when Tammy Daybell was shot at with a paintball gun, correct?
No, sir, I can't answer that. I can answer that Alex Cox's cell phone or his device was not on the property.
Okay, and you can also say that his device was on Chad Daybell's property sometime in the morning of the 9th of October, right?
And driving down the roadway in front of the property. That's
Right. And we don't know who else was on the property on the 9th of October, do we?
I can't testify to who was on the property.
Right. So we don't know if he was there by himself or is he there with other folks, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And when we're talking about you've been on the Daybell property, right? A couple of times.
Yes.
And you took a photo of the car, and we're going to revisit that next time we get together. But it's not 100 yards from the end of the Daybell driveway to the road, is it?
No, sir.
Do you have an idea of how long that driveway is? Could you give me an idea if you know? If you know,
I couldn't testify to that.
is it 50 yards?
No, I would say maybe 30, maybe
30 yards?
20, 30 yards. Yeah.
So 60 to 90 feet.
That's my rough guess, yes.
Okay, so if we're looking at a rifle at 300 yards and dropping it down to 100 yards, we don't need 100 yards to get from one end of the Daybell driveway to the other, do we?
What our investigation or our belief was, if you're asking me what my belief is,
No, I'm asking you the distance down the end of the Daybell driveway to the top of the Daybell driveway is that's not 100 yards, right?
well, that's correct.
That's all I have, Judge. Thank you.
Mr. Wood, is the state ready to call this next witness?
Your Honor, can we approach?
Yeah.
Your Honor, may this witness leave the stand?
Oh, I didn't know if we are. You want to have the sidebar first?
No, we're done.
Okay, well, Lieutenant Hermosillo, you may go ahead and return down. And because you are still under subpoena, maybe recalled, I will admonish you to abide by the court's exclusionary rule. And you're not permitted to review or view testimony trial between now and the time you return for testimony. If you fail to follow that and follow the trial or observe any testimony,